You're watching PowerNation. Today on Carcass, we're on the search for our new power plant for Project Unsanctioned. We'll tear it down and add a few upgrades to give us a little more power.
Then bolt up our new transmission, plus upgrade our accessory drive.
Hey everybody, welcome to Carcass. We got a little bit of a rain day today, so I figured what better time to go pick up the next part of our BMW build. Now the last time, or the first time you guys saw the BMW, we went ahead and pulled it inside the shop, gave it a once over, pulled the entire interior out of it. Jimmy built a sick roll cage, and then we went ahead and plucked the engine and transmission as well. And that's what I'm going to be doing today, is going on a little bit of a scavenger hunt to try to pick up the next power plant that's going to be going in between the frame rails. Now, the original engine that was in the BMW was an inline 6-cylinder. We're going to be upping the ante here a little bit, and we're going to be going with a V8. Now, of course, with the popularity of LS engines, you guys guessed it, that's the direction we're going, but we're going a little bit different on that. Since this is a race car and we're a little concerned with weight savings, we're going to be searching out an aluminum block LS. And then even beyond that, we're going to find something that's a little more on the rare side. We're going to be looking for an LC9. That's an LS engine, aluminum block that came in 07 plus GM trucks and SUVs. Now we've got a line on a couple of them, so we're off to a salvage yard right now, see if we can pick one up and get it back to the shop. A well-organized salvage yard is a great place to pick up parts for your next project. Most of the time, they can tell you miles and condition. And as a bonus, they'll even put a warranty on the parts. So let's talk about reusing parts or getting stuff from a salvage yard or a scrap yard. You've got two major advantages here. One, you're kind of helping out the environment, you're being resourceful by going and buying used parts, and then you're also saving yourself quite a bit of money. And then beyond that, you can do what we did, where we made the phone call, sourced the engine, it was already pulled, and all we had to do was just load it in the back of the truck. On the flip side of that, you guys can go to these pick and pull places and go pick your own parts. If you remember, Jimmy and I put together a green OBS Chevy truck, and we did exactly that. We ran out to our local pick and pull. We pulled a 5.3 LS out of a Tahoe or a Suburban, I think it was, and then we brought it back to the shop and ran through it and put it in the truck, and it worked out fantastic. So there's a couple different options you could do, or different directions you could go. Either one is just fine. Again, for us and with this engine, we were able to verify that it did run before it was pulled, and we know the exact miles, somewhere around the 164,000 range. So when we get this back to the shop and tear into it, it should be just fine, but obviously we'll look everything over and replace what we need to replace. So from here, since I'm on the highway, I'm just gonna start heading back to the shop here. We'll get it tore apart and see what it looks like. Coming up, we start the process of tearing down our V8 to give it a new lease on life. Hey guys, welcome back. Well, we've got our LC9 in the shop here and we're just dying to see what it looks like on the inside. So we're gonna get rid of these bigger parts and pieces, take a good look at it. All right, won't need that anymore. Won't be needing that either. Woo-hoo-hoo! Messy. All right, now that we have the engine tore down here, let's talk a little bit about what we have. This is an LS engine, but it has one big difference from the earlier Gen 3 LSs. This is Gen 4, 07 Plus. They have something that's called AFM, also known as DOD, or Active Fuel Management, and all of that lies underneath this cover. Now, once we get it off, I will show you what's going on. So underneath here, it's going to be 4 different solenoids that shut oil flow off to their respective cylinders to drop this thing into a 4-cylinder mode to give you better fuel economy under light load conditions. And for us in our BMW, we are not going to be running anything like that. So what we're going to be doing here is actually completely disabling this, doing a cam swap, doing a lifter swap. That way, our BMW will run on all 8 cylinders all the time. Okay, so I went ahead and took the timing set out of the way. I also pulled all the lifters and the lifter trays. So now we're gonna pull the cam out. Little trick here, so you don't score up your cam bearings as you're trying to walk this thing out. If you put a little extension in there, it'll give you a little more leverage. And then you can kind of use that to maneuver your cam around through the bearings. And then you can walk it out. And if you guys are just doing a basic cam swap where you're not gonna replace your bearings if they're in good shape, this is the easiest way to do it.
While Jeremy's getting our engine cleaned up, I wanted to talk about some of the parts we're going to be putting back in it. So we went to our friends at Melling Performance and they sent us quite a few things. Some of these parts are just OE replacements, including lifters, push rods, lifter trays, rocker arms, and a timing set. But some of these parts are more on the performance side to help spice up our engine a little bit. We've got their high volume oil pump. We have their beehive valve springs, which are good to 625 lift, and it also comes with retainers and seals. And then we also went with their Class 2 camshaft, which boasts 585 thousandths lift and 228 and 230 degrees duration at 50 thousandths cam lift. These parts are going to give us a little bit of boost in power, and it's going to keep our engine together for a long time. We add the next component to our drivetrain with a gear banging 5-speed.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Well, we're moving right along on our E46 BMW build, and we have our LC9 all put back together with all of our Melling parts. And that started with installing our new DOD Delete camshaft that we slid into our freshly clean block. Then from there, we flipped the engine over and added our Sikky swap oil pan that we got from Summit Racing so we could slide this thing in between the frame rails of the BMW. And then at the very end, we installed our valley cover and our front and rear timing covers. But now it's time to move on to the transmission. So we got to get that thing unboxed and on the table and figure out how this all works together.
To pair up with our LC9, we picked up a Tremec TKX 5-speed from our friends at American Powertrain, and they sent us everything that we need to get this thing bolted in the car. These transmissions are really cool because they are a nice compact package with one overdrive gear. They offer 3 different shifter locations, so it'll fit pretty much any application. In this kit, we've got a brand new aluminum bell housing with a full clutch setup, including American Powertrain's Hydramax release bearing plumbed with -3 line. We also have a pilot bearing and all the hardware included to put this stuff together. Some other cool features of this transmission is that it can handle up to 600 pound-feet of torque, and it can spin up to 8,000 RPM, which will be more than enough for what we're throwing at our BMW. The first thing I'm going to do here is get the clutch set up, and we'll get this whole assembly in the car. All right, ready to get the rest of this put together, and we'll stab the engine transmission in this thing.
Yeah, flywheels on, torque down, it's all set.
All right. One important step to do before you assemble your clutch is to clean the bare metal surfaces. They often have oil on them from the manufacturing process, so anything from brake clean to acetone like I'm using here will do the job, and then we can get this thing assembled, get the transmission on it. Put on a little bit of thread locker. I'll get the bell housing on here. I've already dialed this in already, so I know that everything is nice and centered.
Suppose you need one of these next, huh?
Yeah, let's try it.
You're gonna have to
Get
help
the
me
lines
with...
routed.
Yeah, you'll have to help me with this a little bit.
Sneak these in there.
Go a little further. This takes forever with the wrench, by the way.
Yeah.
Only way to do it, then. Now, before we can set the LS in between the frame rails on our E46, there are a couple things that we need to do, and there's actually one thing that we already did. We went ahead and replaced this rack and pinion here. It was just a good time to do it. The other one was a little worn out. This is just a stock replacement, so it should be perfect when we go to put the car on the track. We're also going to be dealing with some clearance issues as we get that LS down and in here. One of the things that we do have to replace as well is this lower control arm bushing. This is quite a bit smaller than the stock one, and that's just going to help us with some exhaust clearance. Another thing we're going to end up replacing is the stock steering shaft itself. You can see the old one is rather big, and the new one here is pretty small. That's going to give us even more clearance for when we go to set our headers in between the frame rails and attach it to the LS itself. Again, this is a small car, but this all works together to make everything work out. And then when we get time to actually setting the engine in here, we are going to be using a set of motor mounts. Now these just bolt to the cross member. We do have to take the original bushings out of the way, but these will bolt down, and that's going to place the LS exactly where we need it as far as depth in between the frame rails of the car here. Now, the best part about all of this is we didn't have to piece any of these pieces together. We went to Summit Racing. We actually bought a kit to swap in an LS into the E46 chassis. So it's easy as 1, 2, 3, replace these pieces, and we're going to have that LS sitting in here.
And for the engine, we have these brackets that bolt to the original engine mount location, and then we also have a chassis side mount, and with these together, we can shoehorn this engine and transmission combo between the frame rails.
Up next, we'll dress up our LC9 with tunable fuel injection and new accessory drive components. Hey guys, welcome back. Well, while you were gone, we did manage to shoehorn the LS in between the frame rails of the E46, and the kit that we got from Summit Racing to mount all of this in here worked out perfectly, except we did have to modify one thing, and that's down here underneath the car. So the kit that we got is set up for a 6-speed transmission. Since we're running a 5-speed, we did have to modify the transmission crossmember just a little bit. Basically, all we had to do was move it forward about 6 inches so the pad would land on our transmission. We also went ahead and tackled some of the fuel system. This is a Corvette-style fuel pressure regulator. So we have the feed and return coming in from the back side, and out of the front side, we have one feed line, and that's what's gonna run our engine. And to continue on with our fuel system, let's talk about the fuel injection that we're going to be running. Now we have FiTech's Ultimate Rebel LS system that we're going to be running on top of our LC9. And the big advantage to the Rebel system is their intake is rather low profile and sleek, and it's really quite short, which is going to help us because we're going to have some clearance issues underneath the hood of our BMW. Now this is a complete kit, so it comes with everything you need to install. You have the intake, you have the fuel rails, you also have your injectors, your throttle body, and all the wiring and everything you need to install this into your next project vehicle. Now we're not going to install this quite yet. I'm going to do a little bit of work out here, so we're going to start with the fuel rails and the injectors. And then the next step here is to just set our intake in place, on top of the engine, and we'll just go ahead and bolt it down. All right, well that'll wrap up the intake install, and then when it comes time to wiring everything up, we just have this mess of wires to put into the car, and it's pretty simple. It all just kind of plugs into the sensors where it needs to go. But we're not to that point yet. Obviously, you can see we have a long way to go on the rest of the car. So when it comes time to getting this all hooked up, we know it's as simple as a couple connections. We should be all set. The next thing that we're gonna cross off the list here is the front drive assembly. So just get us one step closer to firing this thing up. And all of this stuff came in a kit, and it's just gonna kind of condense everything down into a neat little package here in the car. And I'll get started with this Corvette style water pump. All right, we'll work on the alternator bracket next. Okay, the alternator here's got a bracket and a pulley set up. Okay, power steering pump's a little tricky because they've got 3 spacers that kind of space everything where it needs to be to keep the belt in line. But take your time and you'll get it. All right, and so up next here, we'll put the pulley on, power steering pump here. Then we have the tensioner to put on. Then we also have to switch out the damper here. Well, that'll pretty much button it up for now. Got the front drive on. I just have the belt to put back on it. The fuel injection is sitting into place, but that's gonna wrap it up. So we'll see you guys next time.